The storm struck without warning, a towering wall of black clouds that swallowed the horizon and crashed over the HMS Wycliffe with the force of a falling mountain. Rain hammered the deck in sheets so dense the men could barely see their own hands. Wind tore at the rigging, snapping rope like threads and sending loose canvas whipping through the air with a sound like cracking bone. Lightning split the sky in jagged white arcs, each flash revealing a world twisted by chaos. Waves rising like cliffs, the ship climbing and falling in violent lurches, men clinging to anything that would hold. Captain Alaric Harrow fought his way across the deck, boots slipping on the rain-slick planks as he shouted orders that vanished into the roar of the wind. The Wycliffe groaned beneath him, her timber straining, her masts bending dangerously with each violent gust. A wave slammed into the starboard side, lifting the ship nearly onto her beam before dropping her again, with a shudder that rattled Harrow's teeth.
"Hold fast!"
He bellowed, though he doubted anyone heard him. A scream cut through the storm. Harrow spun just in time to see a sailor swept across the deck by a wall of water. Briggs lunged, catching the man's arm, but the next wave tore him free. The sailor vanished over the rail, swallowed by the churning black sea before anyone could reach him. Lightning flashed again, and Harrow saw it. For a heartbeat, the sea lit up in stark white light, revealing something rising beneath the surface. A shape too large to comprehend, smooth, dark, curved like the back of some monstrous whale, but unnerving in every way. It moved with a slow grace unaffected by the storm raging above it. Then the light vanished, plunging the world back into darkness. Harrow blinked rain from his eyes, unsure if he had imagined it. But the next flash confirmed it, another glimpse of the shape, closer now, rising through the water like a mountain lifting from the deep. The sea around it bulged, waves bending unnaturally as though pushed aside by something enormous.
"Captain!
Warren Reed shouted from the bow.
Something's under us!"
The ship lurched violently, nearly throwing Harrow to his knees. The deck tilted as a massive swell rose beneath the keel, lifting the Wycliffe several feet before dropping her again with a thunderous crash. Men screamed, barrels rolled, a section of railing splintered and tore free, vanishing into the storm. Another flash of lightning. This time the shape was unmistakable. A long, sinuous form slid just beneath the surface, illuminated in ghostly white. Not a whale, not anything Harrow had ever seen. It moved with terrifying purpose, circling the ship with slow, predatory arcs. The water around it churned, glowing faintly with a sickly green light that pulsed like a heartbeat. The storm howled, but the creature moved as though the sea belonged to it alone. A sudden impact slammed into the hull. The ship shuddered violently, wood splintering somewhere deep below. Men were thrown to the deck. Harrow grabbed the rail, his heart hammering as the Wycliffe groaned under the force of the blow. Another strike, harder. The bow dipped dangerously, water rushing over the deck. Briggs shouted for the men to secure the lines, but another wave crashed over them, sweeping 2 sailors off their feet. One vanished into the sea, the other clung to a rope, screaming as the water dragged him toward the rail. Harrow lunged, grabbing the man's arm. For a moment he held him, then something rose from the water. A dark shape, wrapping around the sailor's leg. The man's scream turned to a choked gasp as he was yanked violently over the rail and into the black water below. Harrow reached for him, but the sea swallowed him whole. The creature's glow pulsed once beneath the surface. Then it sank into the depths, leaving only the storm behind. The Wycliffe rocked violently, her hull groaning, her crew scattered and terrified. Harrow steadied himself, staring into the churning sea where the sailor had vanished. The storm had not taken him. Something else had. Something that had wakened in the deep, and it was following them now. The storm vanished so abruptly it felt as though the world had been cut in half. One moment the Wycliffe was fighting for her life against towering waves and screaming wind. The next, the rain stopped mid-fall. The wind died in a single breath, and the sea flattened into a sheet of black glass. The sudden stillness was so complete it rang in Captain Alaric Harrow's ears, as if the storm had stolen all sound with it. The ship drifted forward on momentum alone, her sails hanging limp, her rigging dripping with the last remnants of the tempest. Harrow steadied himself against the rail, blinking water from his eyes as he tried to understand what he was seeing. The sky was a dull, colorless gray, the horizon blurred into nothing. No birds circled overhead, no waves lapped against the hull. The sea looked dead, as though the storm had drained the life from it. Briggs approached, breathless and pale.
Captain, what in God's name?
A dull thud cut him off. It came from beneath the ship, deep and resonant, like a massive hand knocking on the hull. The deck vibrated under Harrow's boots. The men froze, their eyes snapping toward the water with a fear that needed no explanation. Another thud. Harder. The ship rocked gently, though no wind touched her sails. Harrow gripped the rail, leaning over to peer into the still water. The surface reflected nothing. Not the ship, not the sky, not even the faint glow of the lanterns. It was as though the sea had become a single, unbroken void. A ripple broke the surface, small at first, then widening again.
Back away from the rail,
Harrow said, though his voice felt thin in the oppressive quiet. The ripple grew into a long, dark swell that lifted the Wycliffe several inches before settling again. The men exchanged terrified glances. Reed stepped forward, his hand pressed to the hull as though listening for something beneath.
It's moving under us.
Reed whispered.
Something big.
The water bulged again, this time directly beside the ship. A sailor named Haskins leaned too close, trying to see what lurked below. Harrow opened his mouth to warn him, but the sea erupted before he could speak. A dark shape surged upward, smooth and fast, striking the hull with a force that sent Haskins sprawling. The deck tilted sharply. Men were grabbing ropes and rails as the ship groaned under the impact. Haskins scrambled to his feet, but the water beside him churned violently. A long, sinuous appendage shot upward from the depths and wrapped around his ankle. The sailor screamed, clawing at the deck as he was dragged toward the rail.
Grab him!
Briggs shouted. Two men lunged, catching Haskins by the arms. For a moment they held him, their boots scraping against the planks as they fought against the pull. The appendage tightened, lifting Haskins' leg off the deck with terrifying strength. His scream rose to a ragged, desperate pitch. Harrow rushed forward, grabbing the nearest rope and looping it around Haskins' torso.
hold him!
The men strained, muscles trembling, faces contorting with effort. The creature pulled harder, dragging Haskins inch by inch toward the rail. His nails scraped grooves into the wood. His eyes were wide with terror.
Cotton,
He cried.
don't let it take me.
The appendage jerked violently. Haskins' grip slipped. The men holding him stumbled forward, nearly pulled overboard themselves. Harrow braced his feet, pulling with everything he had, but the creature's strength was monstrous. The rope snapped taut, then slipped free from Haskins' chest. The sailor was yanked over the rail and into the black water with a splash that echoed across the silent sea. The appendage vanished beneath the surface. The water stilled. Silence returned. The men stood frozen, staring at the place where Haskins had disappeared. No bubbles rose. No ripple remained. It was as though the sea was absolute in its claim of him. Briggs turned to Harrow, his voice barely a whisper.
What was that?
Harrow didn't answer. He couldn't. His heart hammered in his chest, his breath coming in sharp, uneven pulls. He stared into the still water, feeling the weight of the deep pressing against the hull. The creature had not retreated. It had attacked the moment the storm ended, and Harrow knew, with a cold certainty that settled deep in his bones, that this was only the beginning. The sea remained still after Haskins vanished beneath it, as though the water had sealed itself shut around him. No bubbles rose. The silence pressed against the ship with a weight that made every breath feel stolen. Captain Alark Harrow stood at the rail, staring into the black void below, his pulse hammering in his ears. The storm had ended, but the danger had not. Something had awakened in the deep, and it was hunting them now. Briggs moved beside him, his voice low and strained.
Captain, the men are losing their nerve.
Harrow didn't look away from the water.
They have reason to.
A faint vibration pulsed through the hull, subtle but unmistakable. The deck trembled beneath their boots. Reed stepped forward, pressing his palm to the planks as though listening for a heartbeat.
It's circling us.
Reed murmured. The lantern nearest them flickered violently, its flame bending toward the rail as though pulled by an unseen current. The men stepped back instinctively. Harrow felt the hair on his arms rise.
Everyone away from the edge!
Harrow ordered.
No one stands alone.
The crew obeyed, but their eyes remained fixed on the water. Finn O'Connell lingered near the starboard rail, his face pale, his breath shallow. He stared into the depths with a strange intensity, as though something down there was calling to him.
Finn!
Harrow said sharply.
Back from the rail!
Finn didn't move. Another vibration shuddered through the hull, stronger this time. The ship rocked gently, though the sea remained flat as glass. Harrow stepped toward Finn, but the boy suddenly gasped, clutching his wrist as though burned.
Captain,
Finn whispered.
it's here.
The water beside him erupted. A dark shape surged upward, striking the hull with a force that rattled the entire ship. Finn stumbled backward, but something shot from the water. A long appendage, slick and cold, wrapping around his wrist with terrifying precision. Finn screamed. The appendage tightened, pulling him toward the rail. Harrow lunged, grabbing Finn's free arm. Briggs and Reed rushed in, each grabbing hold as Finn's boots scraped across the deck. The creature pulled harder, dragging all three men toward the edge.
Hold him!
Harrow shouted, his muscles straining as the creature's strength surged through the boy's arm. Finn's scream rose. The appendage tightened, its surface smooth and cold as polished stone. The skin around Finn's wrist reddened instantly, then darkened, as though something beneath the surface were burning its way in.
Cut it!
Briggs yelled. Reed drew his knife and slashed at the appendage. The blade scraped across it with a sound like metal on stone, leaving no mark. The creature jerked violently, nearly pulling Finn overboard. Harrow dug his heels into the deck, every muscle in his body screaming.
Again!
Harrow roared. Reed slashed harder. The appendage recoiled slightly, not from the pain but from annoyance, then tightened with brutal force. Finn's body lifted off the deck, his scream breaking into a choked gasp. The creature pulled. Harrow pulled back. For a moment the world narrowed to that single point of contact. Finn's wrist, the creature's grip, the strength dragging him toward the sea. Then the appendage released. Finn collapsed into Harrow's arms as the creature vanished beneath the surface, leaving only a violent swirl of water behind. The deck fell silent except for Finn's ragged breathing. Harrow lowered him gently.
Finn, look at me.
Finn's eyes were wide, unfocused, trembling with shock. The skin around his wrist was marked by a dark, circular imprint, as though the creature had pressed its shape into him. The mark pulsed faintly. Briggs stepped back, horror etched across his face.
Captain, what is that?
Finn swallowed, his voice barely audible.
It spoke to me.
Harrow felt a cold weight settle in his chest.
What did it say?
Finn looked toward the water, his expression hollow.
It said, "It's not done."
A deep vibration pulsed through the hole like a heartbeat rising from the depths. The creature was still there, still circling, still hunting, and now it had marked one of them. The sea remained flat and silent, but the silence had changed. It no longer felt like stillness. Captain Alaric Harrow stood at the rail, Finn trembling beside him, the boy's wrist marked by the creature's grip. Reed emerged from below the deck, soaked to the bone, his face drawn tight.
No structural damage from the last hit,
He said.
but the hull's humming, like something's brushing against it.
Harrow didn't need the report, he could feel it. A faint tremor pulsed through the ship, subtle but constant, as though something enormous were circling just beneath the surface. Briggs approached, his voice low.
Captain, the men are saying the sea's alive.
Harrow didn't correct him. He wasn't sure they were wrong. A sudden jolt rocked the ship. Not a strike, but a shove that sent the Wycliffe drifting sideways across the still water. The men grabbed ropes and rails, shouting in alarm as the deck tilted beneath their feet.
Positions!
Harrow barked.
Stay sharp!
Another shove. Harder. The ship lurched, the hull groaning under the pressure. Reed stumbled, catching himself on a coil of rope. Finn clutched his wrist, gasping as the mark flared with sudden heat.
"It's close.
Finn whispered.
Right under us."
The water beside the ship began to glow. A faint green shimmer spread outward in a slow, widening circle, illuminating the black depths below. The glow pulsed gently, like a heartbeat rising from the ocean floor. The men backed away from the rail, their faces pale in the sickly light.
What in God's name?
Briggs murmured. The glow brightened. Shapes moved within it, shadows twisting and coiling in slow arcs. They were too fluid to be rope, too coordinated to be driftwood. The water shimmered with their motion, the glow pulsing in time with their undulations. Reed stepped back, his voice trembling.
That's no whale.
The shadows rose. For a moment, Harrow thought they might break the surface. The glow intensified, casting eerie green light across the hull, the deck, and the faces of the men. The shadows merged into a single, massive form beneath the ship, its outline shifting like something half-seen in a nightmare. Then the water erupted. A massive swell surged upward, lifting the Wycliffe several feet before dropping her again with a thunderous crash. Men were thrown to the deck. A barrel rolled across the planks, smashing into the rail. The ship groaned, her timbers straining under the sudden force.
Brace!
Harrow shouted, grabbing the nearest rope. The swell subsided, but the glow remained, pulsing faster, as though the creature were excited by the chaos it had caused. Finn staggered, clutching his wrist.
"Captain, it's calling again."
Harrow turned to him sharply.
What do you mean?
Finn's voice trembled.
"It wants me to come closer."
The glow surged upward. A long, dark shape rose just beneath the surface. The water distorted around it, bending light in unnatural ways. The men gasped, stumbling back as the shape passed beneath the hull, so close they could feel the vibration through the deck. The creature circled the ship in a slow arc, its massive form visible through the glowing water. It moved with terrifying grace, each motion precise and predatory. Briggs exhaled shakily.
Captain, it's haunting us.
Harrow didn't answer. He couldn't tear his eyes from the water. The glow dimmed suddenly, the shadows vanished, and the sea went still. Harrow stepped back from the rail, his jaw tight.
Everyone inside, now! We regroup and prepare for another strike.
The men obeyed, scrambling toward the hatch. Finn lingered, staring into the dark water.
Captain, it's not done.
Harrow placed a firm hand on his shoulder.
Neither are we.
But as he guided Finn away from the rail, he felt the faint tremor rising from the deep. The creature had shown itself, and now it was choosing its moment to attack again. The glow beneath the ship had faded, but the dread it left behind clung to the air like a cold mist. The men retreated below deck in a frantic, stumbling rush, their boots thudding against the planks as though they were trying to outrun the memory of the creature's massive shadow. Captain Alaric Harrow stayed on the deck long enough to ensure no one lingered near the rail, then followed them down. The lantern in his hand flickered violently as though resisting the descent. The lower deck smelled of damp wood and fear. Reed knelt beside the hull, his ears pressed to the planks, his brow furrowed in concentration. Briggs stood nearby, arms crossed tightly, eyes darting toward the stairs every few seconds, as though expecting the creature to burst through the hatch.
It's still out there,
Reed said without looking up.
moving slow, like it's choosing where to hit.
Harrow crouched beside him.
You tell how big it is?
Reed exhaled shakily.
Captain, the hull's vibrating in sections 20 feet apart. Whatever's brushing us is longer than the ship.
Before Harrow could respond, a deep, resonant thud shook the hull. Dust drifted from the beams overhead. The lantern swayed. The men froze in terror. Another thud, harsher. The ship creaked, her timbers pleading under the pressure. Harrow felt the vibration travel through the floorboards and into his skeleton. The creature wasn't circling anymore. It was positioning itself. Finn stood near the stairs, clutching his marked wrist. His face was pale and drawn.
Captain, it's angry.
Harrow turned sharply.
How do you know?
Finn swallowed.
Because it wants to break us.
The hull exploded inward. A massive impact slammed into the starboard side, splintering wood and sending shards flying across the lower deck. Men were thrown off their feet, crashing into barrels and crates. Water surged through the breach in a violent rush, flooding the floor in seconds.
Seal it!
Harrow shouted, grabbing a fallen beam and shoving it against the shattered planks. Reed and Briggs joined him, bracing their shoulders against the wood as water poured in around them. The force of the flood was relentless, pushing them back, inch by inch. The ship tilted dangerously, the deck slanting beneath their boots.
More wood!
Reed yelled.
Anything you can find!
The men scrambled, hauling crates, planks, and whatever debris they could grab. They shoved it into the breach, but the water kept coming, surging with strength. Another impact struck the hull, this time lower and deeper, as though the creature were testing the ship's weakest points. The deck lurched. A lantern fell from its hook and shattered, flames licking across the wet floor before sputtering out. Finn staggered, clutching his wrist.
It's moving again. It's going to hit us.
The creature struck. The second breach tore through the lower hull with a sound like thunder. Water exploded inward, knocking men off their feet and slamming Harrow against the wall. The ship groaned, her frame bending under the assault. Barrels rolled across the deck, smashing into the far wall with bone-shaking force.
Upstairs!
Harrow shouted, grabbing Finn by the arm.
Everyone up!
The men scrambled toward the stairs, slipping on the flooding deck as water rose around their ankles. Reed and Briggs stayed behind long enough to wedge a final beam into the breach, buying precious seconds before the water overwhelmed them. Harrow pushed Finn up the stairs. The water surged behind them, rising to their knees, then their waists. Reed shouted for help as a wave knocked him off balance. Briggs grabbed him, hauling him upright as they fought their way toward the hatch. They burst onto the main deck just as another violent tremor shook the ship. The sea around them glowed faintly, the sickly green light pulsing beneath the surface. The creature's shadow moved beneath the hull. Briggs slammed the hatch shut behind them, panting.
Captain, the lower deck's flooding fast. We can't take another hit.
Haro looked out across the still, glowing water. The creature's shadow circled the ship in slow arcs, each pass closer than the last.
It's not trying to sink us.
Haro said quietly.
It's trying to break us apart.
Finn stepped beside him, his marked wrist pulsing faintly.
Captain, it's not done.
Night fell without warning, as though someone had lowered a curtain over the sky. One moment, the horizon was a dull smear of gray. The next, darkness swallowed everything beyond the lantern's reach. The air carried no wind, no scent of salt, no whisper of movement. Even the usual nighttime creaks of the Wycliffs seemed muted. Captain Alaric Haro stood at the center of the deck, lantern in hand, watching the water for any sign of movement. The glow from earlier had faded, but the memory of it clung to the men like a fever. Finn lingered close, his marked wrist wrapped in cloth, though the faint pulse beneath it still throbbed through the fabric. Briggs approached, his voice low.
Captain, the men won't sleep. They're too afraid.
They should be.
Haro said.
Stay sharp.
A faint vibration pulsed through the hull like a heartbeat rising from the deep. The lantern flames bent toward the rail in unnatural arcs. Reed stepped forward, eyes wide.
It's back.
He whispered. The waves beside the ship began to shimmer. A soft, verdant luminance spread outward, in a slow, widening circle, illuminating the dark depths below. The glow pulsed gently, then faster still, as though something enormous were rising beneath the surface.
Positions!
Haro shouted.
Stay away from the rail!
The men backed up, forming a loose semicircle around the center of the deck. Finn clutched his wrist, wincing as the mark flared with sudden heat.
It's angry.
He whispered.
It's coming up.
The glow brightened. Shadows within the water twisted and churned, bubbling violently as though boiling from below. The men stumbled back, their faces pale in the sickly green light. Then the sea erupted. A massive appendage shot upward from the depths, slamming onto the deck with a wet, thunderous crack. The impact shook the entire ship. Men screamed and yelled as the appendage writhed across the planks, its surface glistening like polished clay.
Back!
Haro shouted, drawing his cutlass though he knew it would do nothing. The appendage swept across the deck in a wide arc, smashing into barrels and crates, sending debris flying. A sailor named Porter wasn't fast enough. The appendage struck him square in the chest, lifting him off his feet and hurling him into the mast with a sickening thud. Before anyone could reach him, the appendage coiled around his torso. Porter screamed, a raw, animalistic sound that cut through the night. The creature tightened its grip, lifting him into the air as though he weighed nothing. His legs kicked wildly, his boots scraped against the mast.
Cut it!
Briggs shouted, rushing forward with his knife. Haro grabbed him, pulling him back.
No! You'll be taken too!
The appendage jerked violently. Porter's scream broke into a choking gasp as he was yanked toward the rail. The men lunged instinctively, but the creature moved with terrifying speed. It dragged Porter across the deck, his nails carving desperate grooves into the wood.
Help me!
He cried, his voice cracking with terror.
Please!
The creature pulled harder. Porter's fingers slipped. He was dragged over the rail and into the glowing abyss below. The appendage vanished, the glow dimmed, and the sea went still. Silence fell over the deck. Haro stared at the water, his jaw clenched and his heart pounding. Briggs sank to his knees, trembling.
Captain, it took him like it was nothing.
Reed swallowed hard.
It's not hunting for food. It's hunting for us.
Finn stepped forward, his marked wrist pulsing faintly.
Captain, it's not done.
Harrow turned to him.
What do you feel?
Finn's voice trembled.
It's waiting. It wants more.
A deep vibration pulsed through the hull. The creature had taken its first victim in front of them all, and the night was far from over. The men huddled near the center of the ship, their faces pale, their breaths shallow, their eyes fixed on the rail as though expecting the creature to rise again at any moment. Captain Alaric Harrow stood among them, his lantern in hand, the flame bending toward the sea in a thin, unnatural arc. The air felt charged, heavy, as though the night itself were waiting for something. A deep vibration pulsed through the hull, and the men stiffened. Reed pressed his palm to the deck, his expression tightening.
It's moving under us again.
He whispered.
Closer this time.
Finn clutched his marked wrist, wincing as the skin pulsed with a faint, sickly heat.
Captain, it's angry. It wants to break us.
Harrow didn't doubt it. The creature had tasted blood. Now it wanted more. The ship lurched in a violent, bone-rattling jolt that sent men sprawling across the deck. The lantern slipped from Harrow's hand, swinging wildly on its hook as the Wycliffe tilted sharply to port. A barrel rolled across the planks, smashing into the rail with a crack that echoed through the night.
Hold fast!
Harrow shouted, grabbing the nearest rope. Another impact slammed into the hull, aimed low. There was a long, splintering crack that echoed from below deck, followed by the unmistakable rush of water flooding in. Reed's face went white.
That was the keel.
Briggs swore under his breath.
Captain, if it hits us like that again.
It will.
Harrow said.
Brace for another strike.
The water beside the ship began to glow again, brighter this time, pulsing in rapid, furious bursts. The glow spread outward in a wide circle, illuminating the dark sea in a sickly emerald tint. Shadows twisted within it, long and serpentine, coiling around the hull like dark vipers. The creature rose just enough for the men to see the impossible. A massive curved shape slid beneath the surface, smooth and dark, its outline distorted by the glow. The water bulged upward, bending around the creature's form as though the sea itself were being pushed aside. The men backed away, terror etched across their faces.
Captain,
Briggs whispered.
it's bigger than the ship.
The creature struck. The impact hit the Wycliffe dead center, lifting the entire vessel several feet before slamming her back down with a thunderous crash. The deck split along one of the seams, a jagged crack tearing through the planks. Men were thrown into the air, crashing into masts, rails, and each other. A section of rigging snapped, whipping across the deck like a flailing serpent. Finn screamed as the mark on his wrist flared with blinding heat. Harrow grabbed him, pulling him away from the widening crack in the deck as the water surged upward through the gap.
Captain!
Reed shouted from the bow.
We're taking on water fast! The lower deck's flooding!
There was another impact, this one angled and aimed at the ship's spine. The main mast groaned, bending under the strain. The ropes snapped one by one, each break echoing like a gunshot. Then the mast collapsed. It fell across the deck with a deafening crash, splintering wood in every direction. Men dove out of the way, some barely escaping the falling timber. The ship tilted dangerously, the deck slanting beneath their feet as water poured in from below. Briggs grabbed Harrow's arm.
Captain, we can't hold her together. She's coming apart.
Harrow steadied himself, breathing hard.
We hold as long as we can. We keep the men alive.
A shout arose from the port side.
Captain, something's climbing the hull.
The men turned as a long, dark appendage slid over the rail, glistening in the lantern light. It writhed across the deck, searching, feeling, tasting the air. Another appendage followed, then another, and another. It was now coming aboard. Finn staggered backward, clutching his wrist.
Captain, it wants me.
Haro stepped in front of him, his cutlass drawn, though he knew its futility.
It's not getting you.
The appendages twisted toward them, sensing movement, drawn by the heat of living bodies. The men scrambled back, reforming the tight cluster near the center of the deck. The appendages surged forward.
Back!
Haro shouted, pulling Finn behind him. The appendages twisted toward the men, drawn by movement, by heat, and by fear. One swept across the deck, smashing through crates and barrels, sending debris flying. A sailor named Whitlock wasn't fast enough. The appendage wrapped around his leg, lifting him into the air as he screamed. The appendage tightened, dragging Whitlock toward the rail. His fingers carved bloody grooves into the wood as he desperately clutched for purchase, but to no avail. His scream rose to a ragged, desperate pitch.
Captain, please!
The creature pulled harder. Whitlock's fingers slipped. He was yanked over the rail and into the glowing water below. The appendage vanished. The glow pulsed once, then dimmed. Finn staggered, clutching his wrist.
Captain, it's not done. It wants more.
The ship groaned in defeat, her spine bending under the strain. The deck split irrevocably, water rushing upward in violent surges. The men scrambled, clinging to anything that would hold them above water. Another flail of the creature caused the Wycliffe's hull to crack open. The deck tilted sharply, sending men sliding toward the rail. Haro grabbed Finn, bracing himself against the mast stump as the ship began to break apart beneath him. Briggs shouted over the roar of the collapsing hull.
Captain! We have to abandon ship!
Haro looked out across the glowing water, the creature's mass of shadow circling beneath the surface.
Jump!
Haro shouted. He didn't wait for an answer. He grabbed Finn and leapt over the rail just as the Wycliffe was torn apart by the creature's final strike. The ship vanished beneath the surface in a violent swirl of debris and glowing water. Haro and Finn hit the sea hard, the cold shock stealing their breath. Haro surfaced first, gasping, searching for Finn. Finn emerged beside him, coughing and clinging to a floating plank. The creature's glow pulsed beneath them. Haro grabbed Finn, pulling him onto the debris.
Hold on! Don't let go!
The creature circled once, leaving only the faint glow of its passing. The Wycliffe was gone, the survivors drifting into the open sea. Dawn crept over the horizon in a thin, hesitant band of gray, its light spreading across a sea so unnaturally calm it looked like it was carved from polished stone. Finn O'Connell drifted alone on a shattered plank of the Wycliffe. His fingers locked around the splintered wood, his breath shallow and uneven. The night had stripped him of everything and left him suspended between sky and sea, with nothing but the faint pulse of the mark on his wrist to remind him he was still alive. The water around him was silent. No gulls circled overhead. No waves lapped against the debris. The world felt hollow, emptied by the violence of the creature's final strike. Finn lifted his head, blinking salt from his eyes, searching the horizon for any sign of movement. His muscles trembled with exhaustion. His throat burned. His mind drifted in and out of consciousness. A distant sound broke the quiet. Wood creaking. Canvas snapping. There were voices carried on the breeze, unmistakably foreign. Finn forced his eyes open wider. A ship approached from the east, cutting through the still water with steady, disciplined strokes. Her sails were white and full, her hull sleek and dark, her masts rising like spears against the pale sky. A French frigate. Finn tried to call out, but his voice cracked into nothing. He lifted an arm instead, waving weakly, the motion sending ripples across the glassy surface. The frigate altered course. Hey everyone, I have a few quick things to say after the credits. I want to thank Jordan Group, who voiced Captain Alaric Harrow, Creepy Oz, who voiced Warren Reed, TJ Leah from Dusklight Radio, who voiced Briggs, Wormhouse, who voiced Haskins, Mr. Freaky Story, who voiced Finn, Jack Harrison, who voiced Porter, and Mafia Elf from Wolfpack Productions LLC, who voiced the Lookout. I also want to thank all of my patrons, and especially my first, who happens to also be the author of this story, Shadowthread Stories. Alright, so part 2 is pretty close to being done, though I may have a few other stories released before it does. I'm also still planning on doing the suited Q&A video. I don't know for sure when that will happen. I'm still working with the camera woman that I normally hire for footage like that. So as soon as our schedules align, and the weather isn't too hot, I'll make that happen. And lastly, don't forget to check out these other channels, and when you do, let them know that Dubach sent you.